disruptive.
Weird thing to happen.
I think Kenny Rogers said it best when he said, you got to know when to hold them and you got to know when to fold them. And considering this trade war between Canada and the United States, two of the largest trading partners in the world, just has gone through this whirlwind of a circus that's making a mockery of everything, that's costing us, that it really is a gamble on citizens, both the United States and here in Canada, that we're the ones paying the price for politicians to not negotiate. And it just seems to be this never-ending feud that could have been easily resolved. As I stated, we could have easily just negotiated. We could have came together and properly resorted to having a real trade deal. But, of course, stubbornness, whatever you like to call it, it just continues on. So, just to throw back to this is the original post. Donald Trump, this is what the first warning that came out back in November of 2024, where he stated, as everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before. Right now, a caravan coming from Mexico, composed of thousands of people, seems to be unstoppable in its quest to come through our country and open borders. On January 20th, as one of my many first executive orders, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariffs on all products coming into the United States and its ridiculous borders. This tariff will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl. So, this is big, and I've stated this before, and we stated this continuously when it came to the trade war. That is a huge key into actually stopping this tariff mess. Is, hey, you got to respond to a drug trafficking crisis that we Canadians have been screaming about for quite some time. And now it's coming from the U.S. president. So we could have had a real negotiation if we actually followed through on promises to deal with drug trafficking, to deal with human smuggling, to deal with our open border crisis that Canadians are very aware of. I'm aware of. You're aware of. People know about this. And it took Donald Trump to make a threat to our politicians to wake them the hell up. So that was the original threat that came out. And that was when Justin Trudeau, who was prime minister at the time, came out and said, hey, we're gonna have a fentanyl czar. We're going to deal with this. We're going to increase our border protection. We're going to do a commitment to NATO. We're going to do everything. It's don't charge us. Don't do this. But then, as time went on, we saw this. Mark Carney ushered himself in to become prime minister, and he openly stated that, hey, the trading relationship is over. This 200-year partnership of neighboring countries that we could have easily negotiated, that we could have easily resorted to something. It's over. That was what Carney said back in March of 2025. So here's a statement announcing that it's over. We're not going to deal with the United States anymore. And this is all part of the elbows up crusade. This was all the anti-American rhetoric, the propaganda to, trick Canadians into getting this guy elected. But here's the statement on this.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over. What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We can control our destiny.
So this right here is a bluff. This is what I mean. It's literally like a messed up poker game. Because Canada is bluffing. That, we have this unmomentous power against the United States. that we could dominate over this trade war, considering the fact that statistically our GDP is collapsing, the fact the economy is getting worse in our side of the border, not just the United States. We don't have a hand to deal with. We really don't have a hand to deal with. And ultimately, Mark Carney knew about this, but he wanted to keep this going as long as possible, trick Canadians into thinking that he was going to be this masterclass in dealing with the trade war and dealing with Donald Trump and this master negotiator to get himself elected as prime minister. This was his ultimate switcheroo trick that he used for the campaign. That's all he talked about. He never talked about homelessness. He never talked about how we could deal with the fentanyl crisis that we know is affecting huge amounts of this country. You see articles of 12-year-old girls that are homeless, that are dying of overdose in places like Vancouver. That's dealing with the most overdose deaths in Canadian history. But Mark Carney refuses to acknowledge that, refuses to acknowledge the domestic issues that we could be dealing with in order to have this feud between Donald Trump and himself and other countries and make himself seem like this power superior when he's not. You don't have a hand to deal with. Your hand is weak. It is weak. And that is him bluffing to the audience, to Canadians, thinking that he's going to be the master negotiator. But as time went on, that wasn't the case. That was not the case. And now, here we are today. The announcement comes out of the CBC. Carney ends most counter tariffs as Trump trade talk continues. Prime Minister says Canada will remove all tariffs on CUSMA-compliant U.S. goods by September 1st. So, ending the relationship, the elbows up, having all these regulatory tariffs against the United States, reciprocal tariffs on the United States, didn't seem to work out. It didn't seem to work out. And now Carney looks like it's elbows down. It looks like he's folding in this game. So the master negotiator that you thought was going to, bring the power, the force for Canada to override the United States when we know our GDP is tanking, the economy is collapsing, cost of living is expensive for Canadians to basically live. We had no hand in this game. We had no hand in this situation. But we did have a way out of this because, as Trump stated in the original post, we could have dealt with the fentanyl. We could have dealt with drug trafficking. We could have dealt with open borders. That is something that Canadians have addressed to our prime minister, that we have addressed to our governments. And they've completely ignored it. Completely ignored it. So we had ways out. But Mark Carney, who gave himself the prime ministership, refused to acknowledge it. Anytime you mention about fentanyl to this guy, he says, oh, it's only 1%. It's not a big deal. It's only 1%. No, it's a crisis in this country. We have more overdose deaths in this country than people that died during the Second World War. Do you know that? We have more deaths of overdose of our Canadians than Canadians that died in the Second World War. That's a crisis. That's alarming. That is something that, yes, the U.S. president even recognized. Even if it is Donald Trump. He at least he's stating it. At least he's acknowledging it. Where's Carney on this? Where was Trudeau on this? Where's any other cabinet minister on this? But you notice how it's only some of the tariffs. So, according to this is the latest that came out. It says Carney will maintain tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos as the Liberal government continues negotiations with the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump commended the tariff removal, calling it nice. Nice. And saying he wanted to be good to Canada. Trump raised tariffs on some Canadian goods to 35% on August 1st. The Trump administration had said Canada's rate was being hiked in response to fentanyl trafficking and Canada's earlier decision to hit back with counter tariffs. Business groups reacted positively, though some appear to have been surprised by the news. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said Carney is showing weakness by making concessions to the U.S. president. So, even Pierre Poilievre, who I gave credit to back when he was campaigning, when he first said, hey, we just got to negotiate. That's what everybody wants out of this. You just got to get these people together, get them into a room, and negotiate like actual businessmen, like actual adults. But because of our ignorance, because of our selfishness, because all the WEF insiders are trying to go after Donald Trump, thinking he's the, demonic outsider, Donald Trump is kind of mostly an insider at this point. I don't know what it is, but I could tell you that Canadian politicians thinking that they were going to go after Donald Trump, even like people like Doug Ford, who continuously says, we got to go after Trump. We got to go after America. How dare they bully us? You didn't have a hand to deal with. This was idiotic. And now you gambled our reputation on this, making us, Canadians, worse off in the process. So, now Mark Carney has to tiptoe around the press after announcing that he's dropping the reciprocal tariffs on the United States. Now he's got to do this word salad because people thought, hey, I elected you to go against the United States. I thought you were supposed to be a master negotiator. But now it looks like you're caving to Trump. What's that about? So here's his response.
Your critics are going to say that this is an elbows down approach, that you're backing down to Trump. What are you gaining by dropping these tariffs?
So the first thing to say is, let's be clear. We have the best deal of anyone in the world right now.
You've done.
Okay. That's another bluff. That's his tell. When he goes into, let's be clear. Let's be clear. And then he makes up an absurd lie. Because as a Canadian, as most Canadians know, we don't have this power. I don't understand why Mark Carney would fool you and people would think that that's the case. Our GDP is collapsing. We're at the lowest point. We're not accelerating. Our economy is not taking off. We have high unemployment. We have high unemployment with the youth. We have such a disaster right now in Canada that could be easily resolved if we focus on domestic issues. But Mark Carney would rather pick a fight with Donald Trump and gamble what little we have left to the United States and cause this rift between two countries that for hundreds of years we have had excellent trading relationships with. It could be better. That's why we could have negotiated. But now you just made it worse. You made the situation worse. So, of course, Mark Carney now has to cave because it's the last resort. And is that going to be followed up by, hey, I'm going to call Donald Trump. I'm going to call the president of Mexico that also refuses to deal with Canada? Are we going to actually sit down and talk like actual adults? Or are you just going to go through this petty feud again?
The digital services tax, you haven't responded to additional increases in tariffs from the Americans, and now you're removing counter tariffs here with no changes from the U.S. side in terms of how things are going. Why do you think appeasing Donald Trump in this trade war will work for Canada?
Well, the first thing is we're matching what the United States has done, what the president has done. We have the best deal of any country with the United States right now.
Pretty much every stop during the election, you referenced.
But you just said a couple months ago that we don't have a relationship. We're done. We're exiting out of the United States. We're done. You're over, okay? We're looking elsewhere, sister. Again, it's a circus. It's a literal circus. It seems like every minute of every day there's something different. Oh, we're talking with the United States. No, we're done with the United States. Oh, we're going to talk with Europe. Okay, we're done with Europe. Mexico, you don't want to deal with us? Fine. I'm going elsewhere then. Who else do you have left? Antarctica? You're going to do a trade deal with penguins? What else is there left? You obviously screwed the relationship with China. You're screwing up deals. We could have easily negotiated with these countries. It's not hard to get people together and talk things through. Trump is doing it right now. Yes, is he being a blowhard? Absolutely. Are they getting the best deal, the best opportunity out of this? Maybe not. But it's better to have talks and deal with this accordingly than this up and down roller coaster psychotic relationship gabble coming from the Liberal Party that's just so ignorant to the situation. They're so blinded and ignorant to the fact that Canada has a lot to lose in this. That even if we have this great one bill Canada economy that we're going to drive force in building this, monumentous projects, Carney is already backing down on a lot of it. And Carney is also taking a lot of our industries that are falling apart, that are collapsing because of his malleadership, and siphoning off for the benefit of his donors and the people that work at Brookfield. He's siphoning out this country the same way that a department store is liquidating all of its assets. He's liquidating everything to Brookfield. He's liquidating everything to the World Economic Forum. That's not what a leader is supposed to do. That's what a con artist does. Mark Carney is the ultimate con artist for this country. And that's what he's doing right here. That's what he's doing right here.
Elbows up and saying that was going to be the strategy you take with the Americans. You also consistently said that Donald Trump was trying to break us so he could own us. Your new argument today is that Canadians should accept basically the best of a bad deal. What's been the change?
Wait. I reject.
Wait.
I reject the premise of that question, or your characterization of what I'm saying.
How would you characterize it, Carney? How would you characterize it when you tell people we're going to go after the United States, the relationship is over, we're going to continuously add on more tariffs instead of actually negotiating, refusing to make a deal with Donald Trump, demonizing the American population, making Canadians believe that we got to hate America to be more prosperous, even though our country is falling apart and we're not doing anything to solve our problems, and continuously go around the world trying to make up these trade deals that just aren't resulting in anything. How would you characterize it? How would you characterize it, Carney? Would you say it's a win? Would you say it's a win that our auto sector is falling apart? That articles are coming out saying that Canada's auto sector may not exist in coming years? That, hey, we're just going to have to, make bombs for Ukraine. That's literally coming out of the Globe and Mail. That was literally a columnist that came out with that. Hey, instead of making cars and reliable transportation and actually fueling the economy here in Canada, let's just make, bombs and weapons and military equipment for another country so they can blow themselves up. How would you characterize that, Carney? How would you look at that in that situation? So, this is coming out of QP. This is the union that's representing the Air Canada right now. This is the big worker union out of Canada. And they put this little timeline together of all the back and forth between the United States and Canada, this trade war that just never seems to end or never seems to get resolved in that point. So I just want to read off some of it. it's fairly lengthy, but February 1st. So you remember Donald Trump announced on January 20th, as he was being inaugurated, that we're going to get these tariffs on. But we had a canary in the coal mine with Daniel Smith going down to Mar-a-Lago and actually speaking directly with Donald Trump and negotiated a bit of a pause. And people saw that as, as treasonous. People said that was being, we're betraying Canada by going down, talking to Donald Trump and getting this pause deal. Daniel Smith actually did the right thing, because while the other premiers were screaming about this and going on American media and saying, how dare you have this president do these tariffs on other countries, Daniel Smith actually defended Canada, actually went down, negotiated, got a bit of a break. It's not great, but it's something. It's better than what any other premier was doing. And that's why he resorted an extension to February 1st. So February 1st, he signs the executive order. February 3rd, he paused for a month. That was when Trudeau came out and said, okay, we're going to get a fentanyl czar. We're going to deal with this. Okay, just calm down. So Trump put a pause on the tariffs. February 10th, China imposes regulatory tariffs on the United States. March 4th, the 25% tariffs on goods imported from Canada takes effect. March 5th, automakers in Canada and Mexico are guaranteed a month reprieve from tariffs. So again, it's just this on and off. Instead of, hey, let's just actually negotiate a new agreement or make our agreement better and stronger for everybody. Let's actually negotiate. It's just, it's like an endless relationship. This on and off again relationship. And Mark Carney said it was over. So global steel and aluminum tariffs on 25% take effect on March 12th. March 20th, China implements tariffs of 100% on Canadian canola, peas, and some animal feeds. April 2nd, Trump announces global tariffs of at least 10% coming into effect on April 9th. An additional 50% goods from China comes into effect. China increases its tariff to 84% on U.S. goods. April 10th, Trump clarifies that tariffs on Chinese goods, blah, 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 going down. U.S. tariffs on 25% on auto parts came into effect. This will only apply to those components that originate outside of North America. May 12th, U.S. and China agreed to lower the tariffs by 90%. May 28th, U.S. Court of International Trade Rules does not give presidential power, so that's when they were going after Donald Trump, and so on and so forth. And now, June 4th, the U.S. increased its global tariffs on steel and aluminum from 25 to 50%. So, I'm not giving Trump credit in all this trade war crap, because I think it's absolute lunacy that we have to do this. But either way, both sides are losing. Again, this is gambling. You're gambling away your economy. You're gambling away your workforce. You're gambling away everything to pick a petty fight with other nations that we could have easily just resolved this with a simple negotiation tactic that we could have sat down and talked it through. And it's now affecting a lot of small businesses. So this is the ultimate heartbreaker of all this. Ryan Gertson says small businesses were hit hard due to Carney's regulatory tariffs, and they are glad to see them go. What they haven't seen is any of the $2.4 billion our government raked in because of those tariffs. When will people realize our government does not take care of you? So this is why I think a lot of the politicians refuse to actually negotiate, because they realize that, hey, we're going to get this extra money coming into the government through these tariffs, but the people that suffer the most are the businesses that have to pay these tariffs, that have to pay these fines and duties to get product from the United States, from China, from elsewhere. And on top of the cost of living crisis here in this country, on top of mass inflation, on top of the carbon taxes that still have not been fully taken off, this is adding more fuel to the fire of demolishing small businesses. So here's a little global news peek at this.
That meant higher prices on clothing, furniture, and other items.
Our August survey data did show that that was the most harmful tariff on small businesses.
And so the Canadian Federation of Independent Business is happy to see them go. But there's a rub. Counter tariffs brought in $2.4 billion in revenue for Ottawa in April and May alone.
Which we still want to see return to small businesses that have been impacted by the trade disruptions.
That meant higher prices.
So small businesses are getting massively impacted by this. Here's the Financial Post saying the same thing. 38% of small businesses won't last a year without tariff changes. So Canadians want an end to this tariff war. Americans want an end to this tariff war, which calls for our politicians to stop acting like petty babies. Stop with this insanity. Stop with this rhetoric. The ignorant asshole material, I don't know what else to call it, and actually negotiate like professional adults. That's what you do in the business world. When someone doesn't get their way and another person doesn't get their way, you come together, you find a resolution, you find common ground between the two people, and you work it out. But it just seems like this is never going to end, and even with Carney dropping most of these reciprocal tariffs on the United States, it doesn't mean that's over. It doesn't mean this trade war is over, because we still don't know what the United States has in pact. And we still don't know if Mexico is going to re-agree to having a trade deal with Canada. And a lot of it's because of our ignorance. Because we've been blindsided, we've been propagandized and fear-mongered that the only solution to save Canada is to get a con artist, a central banker, who all he wants to do is take Canada for granted and liquidate everything over to Brookfield so that his donor buddies can capitalize off our death and disparity of this nation. But there is some good news, because while Mark Carney and Doug Ford and many others are refusing to actually make headway, there are some people that are actually taking the leap. So look at this. This is from Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan to strengthen trade in China, Japan, and South Korea. So the premier of a province has to actually go around the rest of Canada to go to these countries and negotiate for the farmers. It already feels like our country is being separated. The fact that the premiers have to leave their area of work to negotiate and do these trade wars with just the province, not the country, just with the province, already feels like we're being alienated. And it just seems like Canada, this dominion of Canada, is falling apart. The Confederation is collapsing. So no wonder why Alberta, for example, is looking to succeed out of Canada and be an independent nation. No wonder why. Because if it comes down to premiers having to do the work that Mark Carney should be doing, then obviously this country has no real representation. And it leads down to people like Scott Moe of Saskatchewan to actually deal with this. And maybe someone like Doug Ford could do a similar action for Ontario. Instead of going on CNN and MSNBC bitching and complaining about Donald Trump all the time, where's his response? Where is he going down to negotiate on behalf of Ontario? Because right now, Ontario's in a pretty bad, desperate state. And it just seems like Doug Ford isn't doing anything. So, just note, this gamble is hurting a lot of this country and hurting a lot of people. And it just seems like we're not getting any headway, even with dropping these tariffs on the United States. Obviously, that's going to lead to further talks. That's good. That's better than nothing. But we'll see where this goes. But it just seems like it seems like it's a never-ending cycle, because we have two sides that are battling out over their self-ignorance, over their just craziness, instead of actually negotiating like actual businessmen, like actual adults, that we could resolve this. We've had partnerships for years and years. The United States and Canada, one of the longest trade relations in the world, could easily be resolved. Easily be resolved. But we just got to put our differences aside, put down this petty arguments, this, just craziness, the elbows up. I don't care. Just come to the table and hammer something out. Not just for your sake or my sake, but for the small businesses, for the places that are hurting the most with this gamble.